Do one more. Could do many. By the way, CCPD, you see where I make the videos, you know where I am, where I park. There's a wounded pelican. It's a big bird. So I'm reporting it to you. Contact the authorities. It's a big pelican right there on the Oso by my prayer spot. You know, I have many friends for many, many years on the street. Many years ago, one of my friends, he used to tell me, this is many years, he said, I think the biggest landowner, the biggest individual property owner in Flower Bluff are police officers. You see, John, there's nothing wrong with that. Let me tell you what he told me. That this little section of Flower Bluff, they used to call it the gateway to Padre Island, and it's a limited amount of real estate, and over the last years since I've lived here since 1992, they have developed a lot of the areas that were not developed, built some beautiful subdivisions and all. But he would tell me that the cops basically are trying to buy up all of the properties, investment, all this stuff. I'm somewhat familiar with that. And he said that they kind of cross lines. Now, there were lines that I knew were crossed in the area of wanting to buy properties. Maybe a particular person was in that property. I'm not speaking about myself. And then he got picked up. He got arrested for a particular thing. While he was in jail, the same arresting officer, according to Chris, bought his property. Whether he was buying it or renting it, I'm not sure. Chris is not around anymore. He used to be long blonde hair. He told that story so many times. But there was many that said that they crossed so many lines in that particular thing. And so I kind of always question things about it. I'm pulling up to my neighborhood now. If I knew the way they did this stuff, and if you, the public, know, you will not relocate to the city. And what we had, the little things that you hear me talk about, I can't involve too many of my friends in these things, but the police chief of Corpus Christi, Texas, his name is Chief Mike Markle. He lives on Stewart Street, not too far from here. And I go to that street because I have a friend that lives there. He's the neighbor of the chief. But I used to go, and that's been a while since I've gone. I used to walk out to his pier, and he's a good friend of mine. He said, John, you come out here when I'm not here if you want. And I said, thank you. And sometimes I'd go to see if my friend was there. And if he wasn't, I'd walk out to the pier. It's a nice pier, and at the end, he's got like a fishing shack. And it's pretty. Anybody that's riding over the JFK Causeway, as soon as you hit the water, if you look to the right, that's his place. Chief Markle lives right there, across the street. I knew it because he told me that over the years. And so, he's been embroiled in a legal battle ongoing for a few years now, where the city's trying to repossess his property. It's beachfront property. And he's back and forth and summonses and courts. I took him to get a lawyer last year, and it all started with high weeds. That's all it took to initiate a process to repossess that property. Now, the chief just bought the lot directly next to where my friend lives. And there was an anonymous complaint made also that started the process. Somebody said they saw you throwing a fish off the pier, which would be fine to do. If you're fishing and you got a fish, it would be fine to do so. That was enough to institute a search warrant for his property. Believe me, this is all true. He showed me all the papers and all the last 8 months. Now, it made me think. I said, who the hell instituted that? Was it the chief? Was it somebody from the chief or his family, his wife, that began the process for the repossession of my friend's property, which Mr. Markle has a financial incentive to purchase it? Now, to me, with all the other stuff that has gone on, that shows me, whoa, they have crossed so many damn lines in this city. Now, this, as I even pulled up to my house, none of this is new. In this neighborhood, it's called Turtle Cove. And it's a very nice neighborhood. I used to walk my kids through the neighborhood and everything. But I remember we had an infamous incident maybe a year and a half ago. But it was in the local news and everything else. What happened was, I do not know the house, to be honest with you. But supposedly there were a lot of neighbors that complained that there was drug dealing going on out of a particular property, a house in Florida Bluff, in Turtle Cove. That was the complaints. I have never made any complaints. Okay? And I don't know which house they were referring to, but this came out in the media. But after they complained multiple times, code enforcement, which is part of the Corpus Christi Police Department. I pulled up to Walmart a few months ago, and some truck, I don't know who this guy was, but he had a big sign painted on the back of his truck. It said, Code Enforcement, enforce the laws equally in Corpus Christi. Whoever that guy was familiar with the way they use it here. So, because the neighborhood complained, what the chief did with code enforcement, they went around through the neighborhood and they put red warning signs on people's homes. I had one. And it said, you were in violation, things of grass, the gutter, somebody had a car parked with an inspection sticker out. One person had a brand new fence, a beautiful home, but it was like an inch too high. Those notices, I had one, I don't have it still. It said, if you do not correct this within 10 days, the city will put a lien on your property. Now that was the result. That was the retaliation of Markle and the CCPD for those people that complained. It made it to the local media. Chief Markle then had a meeting with, not me, but all the community of Turtle Cove that were worried, and he met with them at the schools here where my children attended. And then he calmed everybody. And then I remember watching the interviews on the local news where the women that were like crying, he made us feel better. And the sense I had was like a domestic violence victim. You scare them, and then you make them feel better. That was the sense I had. And then Markle's excuse for why they did that and put all the notices on everybody's doors that your home will be repossessed and we'll start the process. Look, the average citizen, I grew up in the town of North Bergen, New Jersey. You never had the threat of a city foreclosing on your property and engaging in months and months of legal battles, which my other friend is, particularly with properties that officers want to purchase. Now that's a scandal that they do that. And they indeed do that. And that's not just a little slight thing. That's for people that are thinking to invest or relocate. That's what you're facing in this community. And Mr. Markle later, they dropped all of those, don't worry, I still fixed whatever mine was. Clean your gutter. Clean your gutter. Can you imagine? And the notice says, if you don't fix this violation in 10 days, the city begins a process of putting a lien on your property. I don't know of any community. That's cops doing that. Code enforcement is cops. And look, in many cities, code enforcement is not run by cops. It showed me that you have, and Mr. Markle, he's a hometown guy as far as I know. So he came up in the ranks with a lot of the other cases I talked about over the years. He might be aware of some of the other things I spoke about, many things over these last 5 years or 10 years. So it showed me that a lot of this wasn't just, people mouthing off. Many people said for a very long time that they engaged in that in order to purchase properties and things of that nature. Now our community and Corpus Christi, I'm sure every officer and every cop is not involved in those things, but it was the people that were on the top that kind of were around for a long time. You got a lot of young officers coming on the department, females and males, but corruption is something that goes on for a long time. And the average person does not really believe or want to believe it goes on. I'm not going to repost all the videos I did. I remember watching videos of actual law enforcement criminality, some even cases up in where I grew up and all. And the normal thing is they had a black man, they were trying him. He was going to get convicted for cocaine and all in his store, and we found it and this and that. But they waited till they got to trial. And I showed the video of when they showed it in the trial. And that officer, he looked like the nicest guy you would not believe that he was a criminal. And then during the trial, the defense had the video from the store, and you saw the cop take out of his pocket a bag of cocaine and put it on that black man's counter. Clear as day. And every person was, we can't believe it. And it's the people that have that mindset. We can't believe it. And I can give you so many like that. Now you say, but we do have problems like that all across the country. You do. But this county was rated number 2 as the most corrupt county in the United States of America. The first one was Dade County, Florida, where Janet Reno used to be the top lawyer in Florida. Of course, she became the Attorney General, I guess, under Bill Clinton. Now that ranking for our county, which the biggest city in Nueces County happens to be Corpus Christi, you don't get that ranking for no reason. And so hopefully, the guys that are getting paid way too much money, 97% of the is going into CCP or into public safety. That's way too much, including fire and cops. You can't have 97% tax income with the tax base that's always under threat. That if a particular officer wants your home, it takes just one blade of grass to begin the process of repossession of that property. And that's not a one-time thing I'm talking about. So when you promote this city, you tell people, even if you buy a home, pay it off, pay your taxes, you're still under threat of going to a 2-year legal court battle of the repossession of your house, which possibly was initiated by the chief of police himself, who just bought the lot next to the house. All of this is conflict of interest. All of this in a normal community does not happen. And so when I see all of these things, and then the possibility that Mr. Mitchell got offended because he saw me defend James Pope, and then they went back and got a old charge. It's not your toy. And no matter where you were raised, if you were a hometown boy here, you said, I'm going to make my career, you go to work, and you don't go to work with retaliation on your mind. You don't go to work with one of the other guys that got arrested. I won't even mention his name. But you all pulled him over. 2 of my friends, this is a few months back, one of them had no reflector on his bicycle. And look, that's the thing they do here. When they see any of the homeless on bikes, a lot of my friends buy those lights. They're the ones that buy the little lights in Walmart because they use that as an excuse. Just the bicycle thing. My friend Whistler, a certain officer arrested him this years back because the arrest was, you're not on a bicycle path. And then he got arrested. And then they knew he wouldn't have money to pay the fine and maybe not show up, but he showed up. And the arrest was, you didn't ride the bicycle path in Flower Bluff. That was the arrest. And in the court he told the judge, the area, there is absolutely no bicycle path nor sidewalk. The judge, $25 fine, threw it out. They use that as a tool. You got murders going on, and you're worried about lights on bicycles. What a disgrace. And we want to pump money into that. It's not viable to invest in this community because of those things. And you say, John, they only target people. No. Tell that to the women and the people in Turtle Cove that were all upset. I don't even know if they moved. Some of them probably decided, I'm getting the hell out of this city. And then what happened? The house went on the market. Turtle Cove doesn't have a lot of for sale homes. It's a nice community by the water. So they want to buy up properties. If you're doing it legally, that's fine. You can't mix arrests of people to purchase their house, like Chris claimed, a machinist who no longer resides here. So that's what you see. And I understand that the Lindsay Opals and they all have this view, the same shock, the people in the court, the same shock of the famous G.I. Joe case. Was an outstanding officer. Famous national case. They tried to cover that up. And Fox News was the one that broke that story. G.I. Joe was an honorable cop who everybody loved. Everybody in the community shook hands, prayer breakfast, everything else. And for many, many years, he was stealing money out of a fund. He was embezzling money out of a fund, money that went in, taxpayers paid, for like a youth program. And there was a female commissioner, this was a Midwestern state, famous case, and she began investigating him. It was reported. And what did that cop do? He contacted a hitman to have her murdered. But yet he was like a 30-year veteran. His nickname was G.I. Joe. His name was Nueces. This is Nueces. Well, then as the case progressed, something happened. This wonderful, outstanding officer, he was claimed to have been at a scene, and he radioed in and said, I'm in pursuit. And I think he had 3 descriptions: black kid, minorities. And he gave real descriptions. And then he radioed on in, I'm on the scene. And then they found him shot to death in a field. But he set up those kids, because there were no kids in that field. He got the ID of that black kid stopped at an ATM on his way to commit suicide. And he took off his vest in such a way that he had to first shoot the hole in the vest, put the vest back on, and then shoot himself again. He committed suicide to cover up a lot of criminality. Now, when that local department, it was revealed, they knew it, and they didn't want to let it out. They still pursued. They ID'd those kids that he gave the description. He just saw them on his way to cover up his crimes. And they still wanted to pursue them, though in-house, those cops knew. There was a retired captain who made a phone call cursing his own department, because he saw it was a big manhunt, nationwide news, but he knew. The cops on the inside knew what happened, but they would have preferred to cover that up. Every one of them. And to go after that black kid than to do justly and righteously. All the badges, all the things, all the images, shaking hands, what a wonderful crew. Corrupt to the core. The human nature. And that officer that was retired called in and made a threat. He was mad. If you don't tell the effing truth, I'm gonna... And he made a threat. The cop, the retired cop. And then finally the story broke, which I just told you. And then when that commissioner realized not only did he plan his own death, that's when it came out that he hired a hitman to murder that commissioner. And I remember they showed the picture of her face when I looked at this. Shock. Oh my. Jesus talks about wolves in sheep's clothing. Meaning there's a certain outward persona. And then when you realize what's behind it, there's almost a denial. We had a bad incident that just happened yesterday. I didn't mention this. But we had a terrible death of an officer by the name of Stuart Alexander. I do remember the case. And they were on a chase for a criminal. And Mr. Alexander, a cop with CCPD, was laying out the strips in the road to kind of like flattened the tires, and the guy that was driving, ran him over and killed him. Now, he was put to death already, get the death penalty. And so Mr. Alexander was a good man. And they made a little park here, I guess, and have a placard of him. I read the article yesterday. But somebody went to the park and vandalized the sign in memorial of Stuart Alexander. They also painted something that said like 300, and they don't know really what that means, but it was painted on the sign, and his wife made a comment on Facebook or whatever. I just read it from the local news, and we hope they catch you. And of course it was bad that it was done. It was wrong that it was done. And in some of the other cases across the country, people also have the memories of the G.I. Joes, or the memories, they've seen other sides, and it also causes them to have a negative view, because you never know who you're going to get when the vehicle pulls a person over. If you're going to get the other one that was out raping women left and right, finally got busted. And that department knew what he was doing. So when I see that they might be covering up for stuff, or they might be using their tremendous pay to, let's go get a guy, and then you got a lot of other stuff. I knew that they realized there was corruption in this city with some of this in this department. I knew it. I've covered a lot of these cases. But there were certain arrests made where they were outside law enforcement. And then it would say in the paper, the local police were there for the arrest, but they were not there for the search or the beginning of the investigation. And it made a note that the outside agency, whatever one it happened to be, whatever bust it was, they were only there for the arrest. They didn't trust people that were still entrenched here. So I'm not an idiot. And I see these commissioners, and like they live in the dark. So yes, I've never seen a city where people have gotten their homes repossessed, or possibly the chief himself or a family member wants to purchase the property. They bought the lot there, they want the other lot. Let's institute a code enforcement. Let's get that one up on the market, we'll buy that one too. All of that's conflict of interest. That's not righteous, that's not just. When you cover up for a Genowitz or a G.I. Joe or the Holtzclaw, all of that is corrupt and criminal. No better than any other crime you see that takes place. It's even worse. You say, why should that Mathis? I tried to share the link. That was a Mathis officer who choked the shit out of his girlfriend. And even if you don't file a felony, that would be equal to me burning down a house and killing 6 people while a firefighter. And then saying, you didn't charge me with arson, you couldn't prove it. But then later I admitted it in some program of recovery. Yes, I burnt the house and the people died. Okay, well, he admitted it. And the last thing I would be is still on a fire department. This is South Texas.